For this afternoon's meeting of Cabinet on Tuesday, 22nd October 24. So can I first welcome all members and officers to the meeting of Cabinet, which is being convened as a hybrid meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as possible following the meeting. Meeting agenda pack can also be viewed on the Council's website. Everyone participating in this meeting will be attending either in the Council chamber or from remote locations. Members attending remotely must keep their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. However, all attendees should keep their microphones off until they're invited to speak. Members and officers can indicate they want to speak by pressing the hands up icon. In the event of any vote, the Democratic Services Officer will call out the names of the members who will then cast their vote. We will now proceed to the agenda business. And item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. First, from a Cabinet point of view, apologies from the Deputy Leader, Councillor Jane Gebbie, who's away on other Council business. Any other apologies? Any members, officers? No. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 2 then, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of personal or prejudicial interest from any members or officers? Councillor Farr, please.
Thank you, Leader. Agenda item 14, the grant funding for Porthcawl Town Council. I'm a Town Councillor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Farr. And that's in relation because there's an item on there for Porthcawl Town Council.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, and then Councillor Paul Davies.
Chair, agenda item 14, I am chair of that committee which made those decisions. I'm not sure if I should be taking part in that, really. Tricky one.
It's part of it, role as Cabinet member, Kelly was an advisor. I think it's a declaration.
I'm okay, am I? Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks for that clarification.
Sorry, my microphone wasn't on. We're moving now to item 3, approval of the minutes from the meeting of 24th of September 24 on pages 5 to 14.
Move, Chair.
So far, move. Any second?
Second.
Okay, we all agree with the minutes as produced. Okay, thank you. They are approved. So we now move to item 4. Which is the Local Air Quality Management Annual Progress Report. I think we have Jason Bale here today with us from the Shared Regulatory Services. Jason, are you going to be taking this report from this? I'll hand over to you then. Thank you.
Yeah, afternoon, and thank you, Leader. So just take members through the report very briefly. So section 1 of the report outlines the purpose of the report, which this is a statutory report we bring every year to Cabinet for approval before submitting to Welsh Government. It's a statutory report required under the Environment Act 1995. Section 2 provides a bit of further background to the regulations and the Environment Act and Local Air Quality Management regulations. The annual progress report has been undertaken in accordance with the Environment Act and fulfills the statutory duties of the Council in reporting to Welsh Government and follows the statutory guidance in being produced. Section 3 of the report provides members with an update and a summary of the results that have been undertaken. So just a reminder, what this is titled the Annual Progress Report for 2024, it is actually reporting on data obtained in the calendar year of 2023. So it's a backwards looking report, an overview of that. Paragraph 3.4 details the results, shows that the results obtained in the Park Street Air Quality Management area, which is the main area of concern in Bridgend, did show 3 locations which exceeds the nitrogen dioxide standard, air quality standard of 40 micrograms as an annual average. However, what it is showing is we are seeing a positive trend and a downward trend in those concentrations, showing some of the actions we've implemented as part of the Air Quality Action Plan for the AQMA have been quite successful. Figure two shows the trends in the report there, and you can see the downward trend in the levels being recorded in the AQMA. Just noting, we did introduce, and you can see why it's in figure two, where there is only one value recorded there. We did introduce a new monitoring location in the AQMA last year, and this was to try and replicate monitoring of air quality at a receptor location that was modeled through computer assessments as we developed the air quality action plan. So it was just giving us some additional data there, basically. Paragraphs 3.6 to 3.16, just providing members again an update and an overview of how we developed and got the air quality action plan for the Park Street Air Quality Management Area, recalling that we brought that report into the April Cabinet for approval. That report does have one additional measure that we've retained and we haven't implemented as of yet, and that is the looking at the banning of turning traffic from Park Street into St. Leonard's Road. The report decided that it wasn't necessary at the time to introduce that measure, as compliance would be achieved in the same time without introducing that measure. However, we will continue to monitor and assess that requirement going forward into this year and into next year, provided that we still can see that downward trend in NO2 concentrations on Park Street. Sections 4 show that there was no equality impacts for the report. Section 5 outlines how the report and the action plan was developed in line with the requirements of the Future Generations and Wellbeing Act. Section 6 details that we have the continued monitoring, the budget to continue the monitoring, and Section 6, deals with the climate change and how the monitoring will provide additional data to show how climate change interventions are improving air quality. Section 7 details that there's no safeguarding implications, and Section 8 outlines that we have the ongoing budget through SRS to maintain the monitoring with the AQMA. So, Leader, just moving to the recommendations of the report, and that is to approve the annual progress report for submission to Welsh Government and making a note of the progress that we developed the air quality action plan that's currently in place for Park Street in the air quality management area. So happy to take any questions there.
Okay, thank you, Jason, for that, and we'll go to Councillor Howell Williams.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Jason, for presenting the report. I think probably monitoring air quality is one of the most important functions of the authority, and one of the ones that's probably most overlooked as well. So, there's a lot of detail in that report. It's pleasing to see that the problem area we have identified is slowly improving, and it's almost there now at compliance, isn't it? So, yeah, I'm happy for any members to present any questions they have. I move the report.
Any further questions, members? Right, if not, I'd like to point out in the executive summary, it's just been touched on, it is a positive trend in Park Street area, and as it stands at the moment, we don't need to do any further work. We just need to keep monitoring what's going on there, so it's keep an eye on that in the future. So there's no any financial impact at this moment that we need to take into consideration. It's been moved, well, the recommendations are to note. It's been moved and seconded then, with it?
I'll second the report, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. All in favour? You all happy with that report? Councillor Paul Davis, question?
In the report, it mentions commercial road in Maesteg. I think that's a typo. It's commercial street in Maesteg. There's no commercial road, as I'm aware, in
Okay, yeah, it may be a typo then. We'll get that amended then, if that is.
Tough as well. Okay, just let you know. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. The A to Z, the street map in Maesteg and Liffey Valley. That can be corrected, but I take it's been moved and seconded. All okay with that? Yep. Okay, that's approved then. Thank you, Jason, for that report and the work that's taking place, and we look forward to future reports and the trend moving in the right direction. So we'll now move on to item 5 then, the disciplinary policy. And I take it that's Kelly? No, we're taking all Paul's there. Oh, sorry, Paul, okay. Sitting in the back there. Right, over to Paul. So item 5, disciplinary policy.
Thank you. For the purpose of the report, my name is Paul Miles, Group Manager for Human Resources and Organisational Development. The purpose of this report is to approve the updated disciplinary policy attached as Appendix 1. As with all policies, the process for undertaking a review includes feedback from services and trade union representatives. In addition to updating the policy in terms of presentation and style, the main changes include clarity on when to undertake management discussions and to ensure consistency of approach, including some template forms. The introduction of a fast-track process for dealing with certain disciplinary issues at a lower level. The identification and detailing of the roles and responsibilities of all involved, and the introduction of updated tools and templates to help manage the process effectively. Once approved, support will be provided from the human resource business partners to managers who need to use the policy, as well as an updated e-learning module on investigation skills prior to any formal investigations taking place. The trade unions have confirmed their agreement to proceed with the implemented policy you see, the reviewed policy you see. And I'll take you to the recommendation to approve the revised discipline policy.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you for the report, and we'll go to Councillor Eugene Caparros.
Thank you, Leader. Hi, Paul. I was very pleased to read this policy and see it's had agreement with the trade union. I don't know how many councillors will have experience of discipline or perhaps even serving on our appeals panel in the council, but I know the sheer amount of paperwork that is normally drafted and brought up when an issue reaches that stage is really quite onerous for the council. I would say perhaps even more in detail than I see on most employment tribunals. So I was really pleased about the introduction of a fast track process. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit for the benefit of everyone listening to explain the benefits of doing it and perhaps the continuing consent in using it, just to highlight the voluntary nature of that process.
Paul, over to you.
The fast track process is ideally used as an alternative way of resolving a disciplinary case. I think where we would take this forward, it would only be applicable where an employee has admitted in full all the allegations made against them. The employee has requested and consented to the use of this process with their trade unions if needed. And I think the corporate, and so the third part of that, the corporate director or nominated officers agreed that we use this process as an appropriate. So really looking at the lower level to move through the process quickly to sanction and move forward for the employee and the service then.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Caparros, do you move the...
Yes, I move.
Councillor Farr?
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the report. And I'm really pleased to see in the report that we do have, that we recognise those individuals who have a disability may struggle with that process. So a couple of questions from me, please. How will reasonable adjustment be considered for those with a disability, say somebody with a hearing impairment? Would we pay for somebody to come in and facilitate that? And the other question is, would we also fund for an interpreter to come in during the process for those individuals whose first language is not English? That's second. Third question is, do we have any stats on how many people were suspended in the last 12 months and what kind of time frame, how long were they suspended for? Thank you.
Paul? Can you answer some of those, Paul, or cover those?
Okay, so probably picking up the first two questions in one if I can. With all HR policies and procedures, all reasonable adjustments will be taken into account for any individual attending a process meeting or hearing. I think each case will be different, but we'd rely on support from the service, given they will know the individual and probably have some reasonable adjustments already in place in the workplace that we'd work with the service to make sure they have a fair opportunity to go through the process and access to all information they need. Picking up the language point, I think we would rely again on the service in part because there will be that communication already between the individuals, and if interpreters are needed not only for the employee but for the panel or the officers, we'd have to incorporate that into the process to make sure that clear information was given and understood by everyone through the process. The third point in terms of suspension and timings, I'll come back to you with full detail on that separately, but what I can advise, in the last calendar year, there were 12 cases, disciplinary cases, to just give it some context in terms of the number of employees impacted.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Councillor Fire, happy with those? It's been moved and seconded. There's no further questions, no? Councillor Martin Jones?
Yep, thank you, Leader. If you can just bear with me. In the report, Appendix 1 says disciplinary policy, scope statement, and then it's got bullet points of those who are not subject to this policy. Can I just confirm as well, and I'm sure the monitoring officer will advise if I'm wrong, but this does not apply to elected members, both at borough, town or community council level?
That's correct, Councillor Jones. This is only for employees. Members are bound by different codes of conduct.
Yeah, it's what, in that respect, this was we don't have a contract of employment in that respect. Our contracts with the people that elect us, and we get interviewed every 5 years. Right, that's been moved and seconded. All in favour? Are you all happy with that? Proceed. Right, that's approved. Disciplinary policy, item 5. So we'll now move on to item 6, which is a proposal to extend the term of the Healthy Living Partnership with the GLL, Halo Leisure. And Claire, is it Claire taking us? Over to you, Claire.
Thank you very much, Chair. For the purpose of the recording, I'm Claire Marchant, Corporate Director of Social Services and Wellbeing. And the purpose of this report this afternoon is to seek approval from Cabinet to extend the term of the Healthy Living Partnership Agreement with GLL Halo Leisure Services Limited. And the report also highlights the additional risks that the Council would be taking in regard to operating services directly itself, and asks for Cabinet to consider the evidence in the report to note the actions needed and processes to be followed to extend the Healthy Living Partnership with GLL Halo based on identifiable cost efficiencies and mitigation of specific risks. So as Cabinet will be aware, we as a Council have been in a partnership agreement with GLL Halo since 2012. And that is an initial period of 15 years within that agreement. It's been, I think, by all measures, a highly successful partnership. A lot of evidence set out in the report about how this partnership has delivered a high quality of service for us, and that's been externally evaluated twice now by Quest, and both times that has been an excellent rating. The partnership has been very effective in securing the modernisation of the leisure estate in the county borough, and securing, as the paper sets out, considerable additional investment into that estate, including the development of the Life Centre in Bridgend, which now co-locates the library services and other facilities as well. And the partnership has been governed very well, and you can see that the report references the latest internal audit report, which was a substantial assurance report. So in terms of the extension and the proposal to extend the partnership, this proposal has been developed as a consequence of a number of factors, really. We need as a council to formulate a long-term position, a strategy in terms of leisure services in the county borough, and the development of that strategy, which would inform any future contract, has been unavoidably delayed for a number of reasons, the most pressing of which was the COVID-19 pandemic, during which there was an enforced closure of leisure facilities in Bridgend and indeed across the UK. And in addition to that, we've seen specific issues in terms of recent years around the economic downturn, the financial position of the council, which has impacted on the ability to take forward that strategy. We also know that we're in a very constrained financial position as a council, and we need as a council financial certainty and stability in light of the challenges that we're facing. And in the absence of that longer term strategic approach, there's a merit in considering an extension of that healthy living partnership, which we recognise, as I've said, has been very successful to date. So in August 2023, as a council, we received a formal proposal from Halo regarding consideration of the extension of the partnership for a period of 5 years, and a rationale for that extension. We commissioned an external review of that proposal, which found it had the potential to deliver savings to the council, and also could continue to focus on improving the service and continuing to transform the health and well-being of the citizens of the county borough. And as I said, it's been very successful in that regard, and particularly around the most vulnerable within the county borough. The independent review also suggests that the alternative of insourcing is likely to see budget requirements increase significantly in the short term at least, which would be unaffordable in the current financial context. The review stated that the proposal regarding the extension would enable us to consider further MTFS savings, and as Cabinet note, there are savings in the current MTFS and other savings that we could bring forward in future years. If those savings, if this contract extension is agreed this afternoon. Therefore, we needed to look at this from a legal perspective and how this fitted with our contract procurement rules. So 3.9 of the report onwards gives you quite a lot of detail, which has both internal legal advice incorporated into it and external legal advice from Blake Morgan incorporated here as well. So as it sets out there, it says the current agreement does not provide any express options for further extension past the expiry date of March 2027. So any expansion would require the modification of the existing contractual terms to vary the expiry date to March 2032 as set out. Modifications to public contracts during the term present a procurement risk, which I need to highlight for you this afternoon, with potential for challenge on the basis that the revised contract is essentially a new contract for which there should have been a fresh competitive procurement process, and that may see a claim for damages from an aggrieved competitor. So then 3.10 onwards sets out what is referred to in legal terms as a regulatory safe harbour provided under Regulation 72(1)(c) of the PCR 2015, and provides that publicly procured contracts may be modified without the requirement for a full procurement procedure where all of the following conditions are met. And those conditions are listed there, and then the following 3 paragraphs set out how those conditions have been met during this period. That doesn't obviate entirely or mitigate entirely the risk of challenge, and 3.14 sets out the risk of challenge needs to be set against other short-term operational and financial risks to the council, which I've explained in terms of affordability and sustainability of this service, and the affordability levels that we've set. So we then come on to under 3.15 rule 3.3.5 of the contract of the council's contract procedure rules, which again reflect a regulatory safe harbour provided under that, and provide publicly provided contracts may be modified without the requirement for a new procurement procedure where the modifications, irrespective of the value, are not substantial. And again, the report sets out how those have been met. There could be some potential arguments that the proposed extension does not amount to a substantial modification. That's set out in 3.16. But then the report does go on to provide you with the full information of the counter arguments in respect of that. I draw your attention then to 3.18 of the report, and it's the mitigation of that risk of challenge. And I think this is critically important. So to mitigate the risks of challenge and the counter arguments you hear there, it would be advisable, and we would intend to issue what's called a voluntary ex-ante transparentry or VET notice and or relevant contract modification notice if you do decide to proceed with the proposed extension on the basis of the recommendations this afternoon. And then the report goes on to set out, how we would manage that process in order to mitigate that risk. You'll note also early in the report that this report has been subject to pre-scrutiny, and that the scrutiny committee were in favour of the recommendations in this report and recognise, having had all of this detail, the risks that were being balanced. So I think that's information that's important for you to consider as a council. Also important given the economic climate in which we are operating. I've already referenced the medium-term financial strategy. So the extension of this partnership creates the potential for a further £200,000 worth of saving, which, given the real-term reductions in cost this contract has already achieved, I think is considerable within the context in which we're operating, and there will be potential for exploring further opportunities for savings with the partner if you are agreeable to the recommendations this afternoon. So the financial context is set out in quite some detail within the report, and details all of the savings and investments that have already been made through this contract, and also the current MTFS proposals. I think it's worth of note that this contract has posed a positive impact from a climate change and a safeguarding perspective, in addition to all the other benefits set out within the report. So if I draw your attention to the recommendations at 9.1 of the report, I'm very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claire. And I've got to say, it is a win-win to date with this contract and the partnership with Halo, where costs are reduced and the facilities have improved, and the range of services have increased and improved across the board. That's a really successful venture. And I've just learned something there. The VEET, I've only just got my head on VEET, which is the most economically advanced tender. Now we have VEET, which is, what's it stand for? I'm just going to check again. Voluntary ex-ante transparency. Right. Okay. The VEET and MEET. I will go to Councillor Melanie Evans.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and I will gladly move this report. For me, if I can just go to 3.9 with regards to the modification of the contractual terms. Can you just elaborate for me, Claire, again, please? What are the consequences to this council should the extension be granted and get challenged, firstly, please?
I think, do you want to support me in this? I think what we're trying to do by following that VEET process as set out within the report is to mitigate the risk of challenge. So if we follow that process as set out in 318, then the legal advice that we've had, both internal and externally, provided and set out within the report will mitigate that risk of challenge. So I think that's the important thing to note. If there were challenge during that period, that 30-day period set out in 318, then I think we would need to be coming back to you as Cabinet with an alternative report, which may require us to go through a further procurement process.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. I do understand that that's to mitigate the challenge. When would a VEET need to be published? And also, what route would you advise to mitigate a VEET notice or a relevant contract award, please? Thank you, Councillor Evans. The VEET notice, the process for that is set out. So there's regulations to say when you have to publish it. Obviously, you then keep it sort of published for 30 days and then deal with any inquiries you get then. Obviously, the safest way to do anything is to re-procure through a full procurement exercise. But the regulations are in place because there is an acceptance in some circumstances. There will be a need to do things without a full procurement. And that's why this regime is in place. So it shouldn't be used all the time. It can only be used in certain circumstances when the circumstances are challenging, or you're doing it for a specific purpose. And in this case, you know, the legal advice is that this is an appropriate use of the VEET notice.
Councillor Evans, do you move the report or?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. That is very helpful. So, yes, I'm happy to move the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Paul Davies.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not a question, Chair. It's just I think a few comments about really the success of the Arwen story, basically, for BCBC. It was, you know, it's been, when they went out, the buildings were in great condition, we know that, and there's been investment there since. And I'm just looking forward to the town hall opening up in Maesteg and getting in there and having a look what's going on, and I'm just looking forward to another 15 years of Arwen successfully running out.
Councillor Polish, we're talking about Halo.
Halo, sorry, Halo, sorry. My apologies, I'm reading something else there. No, it's the same story with Halo, with Arwen and Halo, and they've both gone out, and they both been a great success in my opinion, and I look forward to my next swim in Maesteg. Apologies, Chair.
Councillor Farr.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the report. And yeah, you know, I think we work really well with Halo and the team in the life centres as well as the senior managers. I understand one of the senior managers has left, Simon, and I know that he worked really well with elected members. Do we know who the new manager is? Do we have the contact details that we can share with members? Because members have said recently that they don't know who it is. Who do they get hold of if they've got any issues? Thank you, Chair.
So thank you for the question. Yeah, we've always worked very, very well with whoever the managers are within Halo. I don't have his name to hand. He's not started in post yet, which is why we haven't communicated that. But as soon as he has started in post, then we will communicate that to members, so you do know who to contact. And of course, you know, from a cabinet perspective, we do have the Halo Advisory Board. That's Halo's board, to which they invite key elected members, including members of Cabinet and Scrutiny Chair, to be part of that ongoing service development alongside officers.
Thanks, Claire. And I got to mention, there's one person we haven't talked about, Andrew Thomas, who's now retired, but this would not have been a success without his input over the years, without you guarantee that. He made sure this worked and worked well. But he's now taken an easy way out to retirement. But he's busy. But that's got to pay tribute to Andrew for his part in that. I know Sophie's taken over now, but that's a major part of the success story of Halo. As we moved and seconded, I think we're all in agreement. No further questions. We have to prove that that's 9.11 and 9.12. That's agreed. Thank you. So now move on to item 7, outcomes of Estin inspection. Over to you, Lindsay. I take it, yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. For the purpose of the recording, I'm Lindsay Harvey. I'm the Corporate Director for Education, Early Years and Young People. The purpose of this report is to inform Cabinet the outcomes of the Estin inspection visits during summer term 2024 to Falday Primary School and St Robert's Roman Catholic Primary School. The report will also inform Cabinet of the outcome of the Estin review meeting with Nantymall Primary School. The background of this report, Leader, is set out at paragraph 2. Estin visited Falday Primary School and St Robert's Roman Catholic Primary School during summer term 2024, and the full text of the reports is available on the Estin website. Falday Primary School was inspected by Estin in May 2024, and the report was published on the 16th of July 2024. Estin noted that several strengths of the school, and these are listed at paragraph 3.3. Estin inspectors concluded the school is making sufficient progress and no follow-up action is required. The local authority, along with Central South Consortium, will support the school in drawing up an action plan to show how our end recommendations will be addressed. St Robert's Roman Catholic Primary School was inspected by Estin in May 2024, and the report was published on the 23rd of July 2024. Estin again noted several strengths of the school, and these are referenced at paragraph 3.8. Estin inspectors concluded the school is making sufficient progress and no follow-up action is required. Again, the local authority will work with the Central South Consortium to support the school in drawing up an action plan to address any recommendations. Nantymall Primary School was inspected by Estin in January 2023, and the report was published on the 3rd of April 2023. At that time, Estin inspectors concluded the school was not making sufficient progress and would be subject to a follow-up review. The local authority, along with Central South Consortium, supported the school and addressed recommendations, and also regular progress review meetings were held over the course of the year. On the 19th of July 2024, Estin conducted a follow-up review of the school's progress and judged that Nantymall Primary School had made sufficient progress in addressing the recommendations from the inspection. The school has therefore been removed from the list of schools requiring an Estin review, and there will be no further monitoring activity in relation to this inspection. Therefore, Leader, I take to paragraph 9 of this report and ask the Cabinet notes the report's contents.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. And it's great to see the report and positive news on 3 schools. And a big thank you from myself and the Cabinet team for all those working in the school and behind the school, the central services in the progress that's been made. And we'll go to Councillor Martin Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Before I move the report, can I thank the Director and all his team in the central body of the Directorate. Thank the school senior management teams and, of course, the governing bodies for having to experience an inspection, which is not always a comfortable experience, but it's pleasing to see that there's been positive outcomes for the 3 schools involved. And I think this just indicates the great team of educationalists, if there is such a word. I'm sure the Director will put me right if there's not such a word, that we have in the County Borough. And it's a very proud moment for me as a Cabinet Member for Education to see the positive results that have risen as a result of this inspection process. So, Chair, I formally move the report.
Councillor Jones, the report is for notice. That's been moved. And me second. Them seconded, sorry. Councillor Davis, did you want to? Councillor Paul Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for the report, Lindsay. I note that there's been a change in the inspection regimes with Eston. I'm mindful that members of the public may be watching this this meeting. To prove our knowledge and understanding of Eston inspections process, what is the difference between the old and the new inspection process, please? Good. Thank you, Lindsay.
Good. Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Davis, for the question. Yes, there has been a recent change. There's been huge emphasis by Eston, which we certainly welcome, with regard to schools being ready already, is a phrase they use, barod in Welsh. It's something where they expect schools to continually provide the best possible education and not really prepare out of the ordinary, really, for an Eston inspection. They expect the quality of education to be the same, of high quality all the time. That's certainly something we welcome. There's also been huge emphasis by Eston on supporting the well-being of all staff involved in the process. As Councillor Jones has indicated, it is a challenging process, and it should be. It should be one that's of rigour to make sure that educational standards are upheld across all of our schools. So we certainly welcome that. But we certainly welcome the approach that Eston have taken. In broad terms, when we look at what they look at outcomes, they look at the leadership and management of a school, and they look at the type of provision. There's significant emphasis with regard to teaching and learning in current inspections to make sure that the offer of the learning environment and learning within lessons is of the highest possible quality. So I certainly would endorse the approach taken by Eston. It's still quite new, as you indicate, and obviously one of the things we'd be keen to do is to work with schools to make sure any feedback they have from the process, and indeed governing bodies, is fed back to Eston.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. You actually stole one of my next question there. I was going to ask what you put in place to protect, heads and governors, in the region, because it is a stressful process, as you said, especially in light of what happened up in England, unfortunately, a year or 2 back. So, yeah, I'm heartened to know that. Thanks, Lindsay.
Okay, thank you for that. We moved and seconded. We note the report. All in agreement? Aye. Yep. Okay, thank you. And then we'll move on to item 8, then, the children missing education policy. Back to you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Leader. I'm joined for this report by Mark Lewis, who is Group Manager Early Years and Young People. Mark is the strategic lead for children missing education within the Directorate. Mark will provide additional information if further operational detail is required within the questions. The purpose of this report, Leader, is to seek Cabinet approval of the children missing education. I will be referring to the acronym CME during this process. Again, that refers to children missing education. The local authority is required to have a policy document in relation to CME to implement its legal duty in this area, and the local authority must maintain and revise this policy on a regular basis to ensure it remains relevant and to reflect any changes. The updated policy document is attached at Appendix 1. This policy, if approved by Cabinet today, will replace all previous guidance. The local authorities are required to make arrangements which enables the local authority to establish the identities of children residing in its area who are not registered pupils at a school or receiving a suitable education otherwise than at school. The CME policy aims to ensure that children who are missing from education are identified and supported to access their educational entitlement. The policy supports the local authority to intervene to address any issues or changes in circumstances that may be preventing children from attending school. And the policy also supports the local authority to monitor and safeguard vulnerable children, ensuring that appropriate measures are in place to protect their welfare. Clearly, Leader, a multi-agency approach is crucial here for information sharing and allowing for a more comprehensive support system for children and families. There are no financial implications related to this report, Leader, and therefore I take you to paragraph 9 and ask the Cabinet approves the CME policy attached at Appendix 1.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. And the policy attached, there's some useful flow charts in there which make it quite clear the process we need to adopt. And we'll just go to Councillor Martin Jones first then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I formally move the report and thank the Director for presenting the new policy. I mean, colleagues will recall that at the last Cabinet meeting on the 29th of September, we spoke about the elective home education policy, whereby children and parents had decided, or parents or guardians had decided to educate their children from home. This policy tries to provide some sort of clarity and direction to look at those children who essentially go missing from the education community. And if you look at Appendix 1, and in particular to pages 11 and 12, there are clear flow charts which outline roles and responsibilities, both in terms of the school tracking process and also the education welfare officer tracking process. So there's absolute clarity in relation to who has a responsibility to do what, and of course provide an outcome in relation to continuing to look and support those missing children who fall out for a variety of reasons, the education community. So I support the report. And any questions, Chair?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Move the report. That's Councillor Neil O'Farr next.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to second the report. Got a couple of questions though, Lindsay. Really, really good report. And I love the flow charts. You know, it shows clearly the process that somebody has to follow. And for me, it also highlights how important our education welfare officers are, because without this policy would fall apart. So my question, on page 181, the first flow chart, at the end it says result is to upload onto S2S. So I just want to know what is S2S, please. And my second question, who actually takes on the responsibilities of a child who continues to be missing education? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Farr. It's precisely for those questions we have people like Mark Lewis attending the meeting who can give you some more operational detail. What is important, I think, generally is how we record information, and that is very important in both my directorate and certainly in Claire's world. And as I mentioned in the report, how we capture that information and how we share it. So it's a system, obviously, that we use to share information. Because it is sensitive information, it is subject to a variety of data protection.
You do? I don't. I might make my lunch.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So for that very reason, that data needs to be managed very, very carefully. In addition, obviously, there are multi-agency support for all of the learners that are involved here. So we need to make sure not only is the information captured effectively, but also make sure that the information is shared sensitively, and obviously all appropriate safeguarding measures are maintained. So that's vitally important. Mark is here with us because he'll give you a sort of real-life example of how the teams do it. I will just, before I pass on to Mark, just thank you for the comments around the Education Welfare Service, because obviously they do play a pivotal part in this, and they are key players, and not just uploading that information, but the excellent support they provide our learners through you, Leader. Perhaps I can invite Mark Lewis in.
Mark, I assume you're there somewhere.
Yeah, I'm here, Leader. Good afternoon all. Mark Lewis, Group Manager Early Years and Young People. I think there were two questions there. Initially, one was what the sort of acronym, it's a portal in essence. Like I can't recall actually what the acronym stands for, but it's a UK-wide portal. So if somebody is deregistered and comes off the roll within Bridgend then, a child, and we have no new school identified, we will put that information on the portal. If there's any intelligence and information to indicate they've moved rather to a certain county, but it'll go out across the board, and then we'll ask each local authority, not just in Wales, across the UK, to identify if they have this learner, if you like, or this pupil and person within their geographical patch. So the second part of the question, I think, is whose responsibility then, for want of a better expression, is it? And it's the responsibility of the local authority that the pupil was deregistered, in essence. So if it's a Bridgend pupil at that point and they move out of county, we do have, will be a surprise, a significant number who may move abroad, may move back to their country of birth, may move back to, so that becomes more challenging sometimes to track in terms of their destination. But in summary, it's a portal, and the responsibility is with the local authority that pupil deregisters from, or does not subsequently attend, if you like. Sure, if that answers both of your points, there, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Mark. You're okay with that, Councillor Farr? What do you
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, the policy, it's more about safeguarding, isn't it? And yeah, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mark, on that one. Councillor Farr. Councillor, nope, it was Councillor Melly Evans. Your hand's gone down. Right. So we'll come to Councillor Melly Evans. Let me come back to Paul. It was there, yeah. The hands have disappeared. What's happening?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. My hands keeps on going down quite frequently, actually, so I don't know what's actually happening there. Thank you, Lindsay, for the report. It is appreciated. I've just got two questions. The first question is, who and how frequently do we monitor the audit of school compliance with legislation relating to the maintenance of the registers? And the second question is, how many CMEs do we have within our borough, please?
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Evans. I can certainly pick up the second one. And again, the expert advice will hopefully come from Mark Lewis for the first one, because that's certainly a technical issue. Currently, we have 30, 30. That's the figure that we have with regard to children missing education. It might be worthwhile, Chair, if it's okay, just give us some context. I think Councillor Farr picked on it quite well on it in her question about why we have these numbers, and again, because it is important to understand this. So Mark's touched upon the fact that we some have children that move out of county, out of country, and again, that is a time where we need to track these learners very carefully, and that information is not always there. Sometimes to do with the fact we have a school application that has not been made to a school in Bridgend, so again, we need to speak to the families very closely to make sure they do that. We also see as well, and this is quite a challenging one, is that when we see that some children are reported as electively home educated, but they've not formally received notification from the families they are EHE. So that again is something that we track very closely with the team. Interestingly, out of that 30, as you would appreciate, there's a number of sibling groups in that as well. So they're not just different children, different families. They tend to be similar families as well in the main. And the other issue as well, again, we work with partners very closely on this, is if some children go into temporary accommodation. And again, that's an issue that we track very carefully with partners. As far as the regularity of the reports, Mark, through the Leader, you are able to advise.
Mark?
Yeah, by all means. So we'll review the schedule of CME within a Bridgend context almost on a daily basis. This is a live portal. This is a live, so as Lindsay's just indicated, there tend to be maybe bigger sibling groups within that cohort of 30, a large proportion, just for the record, have moved out of country. So it's more challenging to track those down in terms of getting that notification. But we will review operationally, that number 30, is ever changing really for reasons Lindsay's indicated. So the actual operational detail is reviewed weekly, if not daily on occasions, to try to ascertain a destination for, because if they remain within Bridgend and then they've moved out to the education system, then in another acronym I don't particularly like, NEAT, not in education, employment, training, so there's a correlation with that as well. So we're actually reviewing the cohort very regularly to work through their destination. One, to obviously fulfil our sort of statutory responsibility, but two, to ensure that, as I think it was Councillor Farr indicated, the issues around safeguarding, which are probably self-evident within this report. So it's a regular review of both the portal and the cohort that Lindsay's referred to.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Was the question of the register, how the register is monitored, or school registers? I know how that works. Is that an electronic system? Lindsay, perhaps?
Thanks, Leader. So as far as registers in schools are concerned, obviously that's done daily. We work very closely with schools twofold, really. Electronically, in the first instance, we have a management information system that we track, obviously, attendance in schools. That's a well-established system now that we work with our education welfare officers and schools with that. The other issue we obviously track is, as Mark's indicated, those who are not in school. So we track those very carefully. So it's twofold. But I think it's the operational system based. So that's the bit when we look at the portal or the MIS system, the management information system, but also the personal contact that the EWOs will have with schools on a very regular basis.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Councillor Evans, okay with the answers? Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Right, yo. Moving on to Councillor Paul Davies.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try to stick to the right report this time, Chair. Lindsay, I'm looking at the flow charts mentioned by Councillor Farr on the Appendix 1. Number 1 is pretty explanatory. The child is absent from school, etc. When you sort of answer this question, but I got a quick query. If a resident or parent nearby and sees a child, they're sort of concerned, should the school age, this child's not in school, where do they go then with that concern? It's not quite clear in that. I'm guessing it is in there somewhere, but it's just a referral from the school. Obviously, the school doesn't know about the child. They can't refer them, can they? And you said they track children that not on the radar. But from a resident's point of view, if you get my question, what do they do? What's the...
Thanks, dear. Thanks, Councillor Davies. I think that the key element here is safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. It's the top priority of this council, the top priority of every council. So any concerns that any resident might have, please feed them through to us. And obviously we will treat them sensitively, obviously, and follow up any concern.
You could report to a councillor, to a policeman, anybody really, then they would be obliged then to feed it back into this authority, wouldn't they? Okay, thank you.
Okay, right, yo. Back to Councillor Martin Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Perhaps it's just appropriate just to finish off this discussion. I think what we've got today is the second part, second policy, basically. If you look at elective home education delivery, that's children being educated at home. And now we've got a missing children policy. That's children who, for a variety of reasons, as have been outlined by both Mark Lewis and by Lindsay, who have gone off the radar. We can be assured as a cabinet and as a council that we have got two robust policies from a strategic perspective, and we've also got the operational focus on safeguarding of children as well. So I welcome the report and thank my colleagues for their questions.
Okay, thank you for that. And there's one question I could ask. I may be overthinking this, but we're talking about children going off the radar. But I'm wondering, are there instances, could there be people children who don't even get registered on the radar? So from birth, they don't attend nursery, never attend. How would they pick, if there are such as instances where they're not on the radar in the first place? How do we pick that up?
Thanks, Leader. I think this is where the multi-agency approach comes in. Obviously, there's very close working relationships between myself and Claire's directorate from a family support point of view. Clearly, there would be lots of work from a health perspective that we'd work with partners there. So again, from pre-birth all the way through the various facilities we offer through this council and other partners in the very early years, through into schools, through childcare. So there's a variety of mechanisms that we seek to do that. And again, my colleague Claire sitting alongside me, we work very, very closely, not just on a safeguarding level, on a variety of processes with a range of partners, not least with the Regional Partnership Board, to make sure that those processes are adhered to.
Okay, great, thank you for that. So with the partnership working, the safety net should be there somewhere of the police as well across the board. There shouldn't be any slipping through that net. That's been moved and seconded, I think, isn't it? Seconded, yep. All in favour and agreement with the approve that policy, the CME policy? Thank you. So move on now to item 9, Disabled Facilities Grant Framework. Who's taking this one, is it? Caris.
I'll take that one. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you.
Just for the sake of the recording, I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Housing and Change. So the purpose of this report for you is to seek approval to enter into a framework agreement with successful bidders to deliver our disabled facility grant related works. This framework has been developed to enable the Council to work with suppliers who are qualified and skilled in the relevant fields to ensure that we provide a service that meets the standards we require and is able to respond to requests for work in a timely manner. Following approval from Cabinet earlier this year, work was completed to develop the necessary tender documents. The framework has been split into 5 separate lots, which are detailed for you at Table 1 of this afternoon's report. The tender process was completed on the 25th of July this year, and the evaluation of the tenders received was designed to ensure that suppliers could evidence the necessary trade knowledge, skills, experience, competency, qualifications and certification to undertake the work that we require. The top 6 qualifying bidders in each of the lots are highlighted for you at paragraph 3.9 of the report. And it is proposed that a framework agreement is entered into with each of these suppliers. The overall value of the framework agreement over a 4-year period is £7.8 million, and this will be funded from the Council's annual capital budget for disabled facilities grants, which is currently 1.75 million per year. The finalisation of this framework is one of the key elements of our process to improve the way in which we deliver disabled facility grants and the time required to complete the works that are identified. So if I may, Leader, I'd just take you to section 9 of the report, where it's recommended that Cabinet note the contents of the report and also approve the award of a DFG framework and authorises the Council to enter into a framework agreement with successful bidders detailed in this report to deliver the works required for disabled facilities grants. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Caris. Maybe a few questions because on this report. Councillor Neil Farr first.
Thank you, Chair. And Caris, can I thank you and your team for bringing this report together. It's very informative with lots of details in there. A couple of questions from me. Want to know why now? Why haven't we done this framework before? That's question 1. Second question, if we do approve work on a privately owned home, I know it's kind of means tested, but we are funding part of that work in that property. Do we put a charge on the property in case that property is sold so we get our money back? And the third question is, what kind of time frame is it from the fund being awarded and to the work commencing, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those questions, Councillor Farr. Why now? I think we've been on a bit of a journey in relation to how we deal with disabled facility grants requests. And there was a decision made, I think, prior to COVID about how we would change this service. I have to say it has been delayed because of the impact of COVID. So it has taken us a while to get this framework together. It was quite complicated to get it together. You'll see from the report there are a number of different lots. We've had to categorise works and things. So it hasn't been a straightforward tender process. So I think we would have liked to have brought this report to you sooner. But I think it is the finalisation of some of the work that we've been doing, so I am really pleased to be able to bring it to you now. Approved work, yes, we do work in privately owned houses. There is a time limit. So if they move the house or they want to sell the house within 10 years, then we will go back and ask for that money back. There are circumstances that we would make alternative considerations, but by and large, when people are awarded the DFG, they sign an agreement that if for any reason they move from that house, then we would expect that money to be repaid to the council, because as you said, it's public money, and we could then use that money, recycle it within the Disabled Facilities Grants process, really. And then the time frame from funding being agreed and works being undertaken, I think I'd like to come back in say 12 months' time and give you an update on that. There have been delays in that process recently because we've been tendering each one of these disabled facilities grants on a one-on-one basis. That takes time. One of the reasons for bringing the framework is that we can now make some direct awards to contractors who are on that framework, and it should speed up that process. So we hope that it will drop now from the longer time it was on an external contract to a direct award on the framework, and it will speed that process up for people.
That's great. Thank you, Keris. I think it's really good that this report is going to help us move forward and meet the needs of people a lot quicker than we have been doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm just looking, there's something going wrong with the system again. People's hands have been lowered. I know I've got access. I'm assuming nobody on the call is doing it, but I can go on and lower somebody's hand without their knowledge. There's something not right with the system where Councillor Evans' hand has been lowered twice without their knowledge. That does need checking, whatever's going on with the system. If I got access to lower hands, I'm assuming everybody in this call can go on and click 3 dots and lower somebody's hand. Shouldn't be happening, but it is happening. It continues in other meetings. That does need to be sorted. Councillor Martin Jones.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and can I thank Caris for the report. Could I please take colleagues to paragraph 3.2 under 3 current situation / proposal. And paragraph 3.2 states the overall value of the framework agreement over a 4-year framework period is estimated to be 7.8 million. And then the next sentence suggests this is not a guarantee, but it may go up and perhaps it may come down. But it's the last sentence which I'm particularly curious about, and that is, works will be allocated based on a need basis and in line with available budget linked to funding from Welsh Government. So if we focus on the words need basis, is the current trajectory of demand going up? Would we know? Or is it going down? And if it is going up, is it in relation to any particular demographic or geographic, perhaps motivating factor? And secondly, when we look at the words linked to funding from Welsh Government, do Welsh Government fund this entirely? Or is it a match funding arrangement between ourselves and Welsh Government? And is there a firm commitment from Welsh Government for this 4-year period? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Caris?
Thank you for those questions. I think looking at the applications that we receive for disabled facilities grants, they have increased. They're plateauing now this year compared to last year, actually, last year compared to the year before is slightly down at about 500 applications during the year. So they do peak and trough, but we do monitor them. With regards to your question for more detail on that, really, are they from a particular demographic? I don't have it with me, but I can certainly get that and forward that on to you. With regards to the question around funding, that 1.75 million is BCBC funding. It's not Welsh Government funding, it's BCBC funding. And it's one of those elements in the capital programme where we have a standard allocation every year. Interestingly, on that, we're now spending more on our DFGs than we have done for a while. And some of that is, you'll see the applications have gone up. And some of that is we have smartened up our processes so that we can get through them quicker. The reason why we talk about on need, when they come in, they will be assessed. And obviously those are that at risk of life or limb would be prioritised. And we do have OTs working with us to make sure that we assess the works correctly. So there's a qualified input there from an OT perspective. We have actually been able to bring back in more money last year because we were able to access some funding that was available via the Regional Partnership Board. I think they had funding available. So we were actually able to spend more than our BCBC allocation last year. And we're always looking out for additional funding because at the moment we could certainly spend more than the 1.75 million that's currently in the budget going forward.
Thank you for that, Caris. Councillor Howard Williams, we will get to Councillor Melanie Evans. Her hand has been removed 3 times after this.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. My question is focused on reusing equipment, and I know you got a list of approved contractors there, but on 2E, stair lift supplies, I'm just wondering, are we encouraging the reuse of stair lifts? And maybe to a certain degree as well, external ramps possibility that we can reuse some of those facilities. So is there any emphasis on reuse? Thank you.
We will do if we can, but that's not always easy. Stair lifts will be made to fit a particular stair, whether that's the width or the length. So if we can do, we will do. But it can be difficult as well to keep track of what the equipment is. Things like this are they're more permanent fixtures in somebody's home, aren't they, really? Like a stair lift. If we can take it out and reuse it, then we would try to, but it's not always straightforward.
Quickly come back. I'm aware that there are companies there that actually provide reconditioned stair lifts with a very quick turnaround. So I'm just wondering if if anyone that contacts us requiring that, our waiting list could be several months. Whereas I am aware of examples whereby you can have a stair lift fitted in under 7 days.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams. And some people need things, done within weeks rather than months. I know it does take a long time. The interesting part is that I wasn't 100% clear myself. This is all BCBC funding. I'll come to Melanie at Councillor Evans, but before I forget this question, if it's our funding and we may have to reduce funding over the years, where we like this, because it's a 4-year contract with estimated spend. So are we committed to that spend contractually or?
No, we're not. These contractors will now sit on a framework and we can call them off as and when we need the work doing. So we're not committed to spending up to that maximum amount.
Thank you for that, because we do need to be looking at the whole budget as well and where we are with spend. Right, Councillor Melanie Evans, after 4 or 5 attempts of your hand being removed for some reason.
Thank you, Leader. I appreciate it. Thank you, Caris, for the report. I mean, firstly, I recognise that the annual spend per lot is based on historic spend. Yeah, given the financial climate and the market we find ourselves operating in, would it be fair to believe that these costs could be higher? And if I can draw your attention to point 8.1, as detailed at paragraph 3.2, the overall value of the framework agreement over a 4-year framework period is estimated to be 7,800,000. The estimated annual and 4-year of each lot is detailed in paragraph 3.3. The cost of the works will be met from the Council's annual capital budget for DFGs, which is currently 1.750 million per annum. Works will be allocated based on a need-to-need basis. Now, if it's a 4-year contract, what we have in our capital spend is 1,750,000. Times 4, it makes £7 million. But the estimated cost is £7,800,000. So where would we find that shortfall? And I do have another question as well, if possible. Can you just explain to me what are the benefits and consequences of using a call-off contract? And what are the benefits in awarding contracts to 6 suppliers and 3 reserves where possible, please? Yeah, thank you for your question. I think that where the other balancing figure is, if you like, is that we spent 2.8 million last year on our disabled facilities grants because we were able to pull in external funding from somewhere else. So the framework is if we have that, if we are able to access additional funding in the coming years, and that's not necessarily from BCBC, then we will do so. So the framework, that's an estimate of what we'll spend. But we will continue to seek for external funding if we can find it, because we've got the demand for this particular spend. But also to reassure you, if the money isn't there, we will not be spending it either. So we won't do that. And I suppose the benefits of having a call-off contract is because we run the framework via a tender process, we're confident that all of those suppliers on these lots, if you agree them today, are able to do the work that we require to a level of expertise and skill, and they have the experience of putting in whichever lot that they're falling into. They've then given us some indicative costs within that to get on to that framework. So we have really a good idea, therefore, of the cost that we will be paying for these different lots and different types of work. And because the tenders are recent, they're going to reflect current costs. So we're not in a position where 3 years ago it would have cost us 75% of what it's going to cost us now. So the costs that we have now on those frameworks are based on the costs as they were in July. So we have a reassurance, I think, about how much it will cost us to do a kitchen or to do a stair lift, because we've got recent figures.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Williams, your hand? Was that an old? Oh, right, okay. And there's one further question, I'd just like clarity, and I'm assuming it's all covered within the sort of specification, the tender documents as regards quality of work, time scales of work being completed, to make sure that the money that is spent is well spent and there's a quality product produced at the end of it.
I suppose just to reassure you that the evaluation process was not just about cost, it was about exactly those things: experience, deliverability, and quality of the workmanship.
Okay, thanks, Gladys. Was it moved? It was moved and seconded. Moved and seconded. We all in agreement? It was a seconded? Yep, all in agreement with that one. Thank you, Gladys. That's Disabled Facilities Grant Framework. Approve the recommendation. We'll now go on to item 10, slightly more complicated, maybe, but Gladys, item 10, minimum revenue position policy. Hopefully you can explain that one to us before we go into some questions.
Thank you, Leader. Can I just make a slight amendment? It's come up on the agenda as the minimum revenue something. It should actually be the minimum revenue provision. That's what we're talking about this afternoon, just to be clear. I think it says that on the actual report. So the purpose of this report is to seek your approval for a revision to the Council's minimum revenue provision policy, and if you agree that it goes forward to Cabinet for final approval, because it's Cabinet who would have to approve this change. Sorry, Council needs to approve the final change, yeah. Council approves a capital strategy every year, and that includes our policy with regards to the minimum revenue provision. So capital expenditure can purchase, improve or extend the life of our council assets. And there are a number of ways in which we can fund that, and one of which is around borrowing. So borrowing can either be termed as supported borrowing, which means that the funding is provided via Welsh Government through our revenue settlement to cover those revenue costs, or it can be unsupported borrowing. And the council has to decide the level of borrowing it's willing to support, but also there is no Welsh Government funding to support that particular revenue costs, and therefore all of those fall on the council. Therefore, when we make decisions about borrowing, we have to make sure it's prudent and we can afford it going forward. So as required by regulation, the council must put aside revenue resource to repay that borrowing, and this is known as the minimum revenue provision, or the MRP. The regulations require that the amount to be put aside should be prudent. In other words, that we know that we can afford to make that. But they don't actually set out what prudent is and they leave it for each council to decide for themselves what is a prudent amount that they can afford through their revenue account, and therefore how much they can afford to borrow. So we do review the minimum revenue provision policy every year. It's one of the papers that comes to council when we're setting the budget. And currently the policy requires that the MRP is on an asset life method, so payment is made in equal instalments over the life of our assets. And on this methodology, the estimated cost of the MRP charge in the current year is £5.7 million. The council can also base the provision on an annuity payment method, and under that method the council would pay less in the earlier years and payments would increase over the repayment period. The benefit of using the annuity method is the repayments would smooth out the total costs over the period of the loan. The difference in payments is illustrated for you in tables at paragraph 3 of today's report. And it is important to note that in the example given in the report, both methods would repay the capital financing requirement over the same time period. It's just the way in which the money is spread over that period. There are revenue implications of the proposed changes. There would be a reduced requirement for revenue funding for the next 10 years if you were to agree that we should move to an annuity method. The savings are outlined for you in paragraph 3.7 of the report. The report does include some graphs for you which illustrate for you the comparison of using the current straight line method and moving to an annuity method of repayment, and these are shown for you at paragraphs 3.11 and 3.12. The first graph indicates that the change in methodology will produce savings in the first 24 years up until 2048-49. There will be a loss of interest for the council if we go to the annuity rate. And so in that case, if we take that into account, we would still be making savings on our revenue account up until the financial year 2038-39. The cost of this method does increase. I need to make you aware that the cost of this method will increase the revenue payments after those dates. But the value of that money by the time we get to 39 will be less than it is today. So £1 today is worth more than £1 will be worth in that time period. In making decisions with regards to the minimal revenue provision, we have given due regard to the relevant legislation and guidance that is available on this matter. We've also taken advice from our Treasury Management advisors. We sought their advice regarding options which we could include with regards to extending the period over. We did look at whether we should extend the period over which we repay our debt. We currently repay it over 45 years and we considered increasing it to 50, or whether or not we should change the basis on which we are repaying our debt and move from a straight line to an annuity basis. The view of our Treasury Management advisors was that the annuity method is superior to the straight line method which we currently have, as it spreads the total capital financing costs evenly over the asset life. And therefore they proposed that the better option for the council was to go to the annuity method. I can also confirm that other local authorities in Wales are using the annuity method as well, so we're certainly not groundbreaking with regards to this change. I should say as well that we've also sought advice from our external regulators, that is Audit Wales, with regards to this. What they have confirmed is they would want to make sure that the change is prudent, that we've thought through the issues, but they can't tell us at this stage what prudent would be. But they would be seeking reassurance that in making these changes, we have followed current guidance and legislation, and that we have taken into account any risks or costs associated with this option. I believe that we have done that prior to bringing this report to you this afternoon, because we have taken advice and detailed advice from our Treasury Management advisors on this. So if I can, Leader, I would just take you to recommendation in section 9, where it's recommended that Cabinet recommends that Council approves the revision of the minimum revenue provision policy 24-25 for calculating our MRP, and the revised minimum revenue provision statement, which is attached for you at Appendix A. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, thank you, Caris, and that explains it well. I do now understand where we are with this, how it works, I think, and don't actually explain it to me, but that it covers off well. Thank you for that, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Caris, and thank you for that explanation. I think, along with the Leader, that was a good explanation of a very complicated report, and I thank you for that. A number of my questions you did actually address in your presentation, because one thing is these changes are in line with current guidance, and they meet the standard or the requirements of our regulators. We have taken external advice on in bringing this policy before us, and we are also in line with other local authorities who use this method for calculating the MRP. And I think the bit that kind of really sent it home for me was this method, or this taper method, takes into account the time value of money. And that is, in future years, then £1,000 would be probably more affordable than it is today. So it certainly it reflects the time value of money, and that and it's in line with inflationary projections. So I'm happy to move the report, and of course this will go forward to Council tomorrow for final approval at full Council. So I move the recommendation. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Davis seconded that. No further questions? We all happy to agree that vote? Yep. Thank you for that. Right, we'll take one more now, which is the budget monitoring, and then propose to have a 10-minute comfort break. 10 seconds. So item 11 next, budget monitoring 24-25. Back to you, Caris.
Thank you, Leader. So the purpose of this report is to provide Cabinet with an update on the Council's revenue financial position as at the end of September. So the approved revenue budget for this financial year is £360.6 million. The Council's net revenue budget and projected outturn for the current financial year is shown for you today at Table 1 of this afternoon's report. The table outlines a projected net overspend of £6.8 million, which is made up of a net overspend on directorate budgets of £8.8 million and a net underspend of £2 million on our council-wide budgets. This is an improved position on the Q1 position, when the projection was a net overspend of £9.2 million, consisting of overspends on directorate budgets of over £11 million and an underspend on our council-wide budgets of £1.9 million. The main financial pressures remain in Social Services and Wellbeing Directorate, Home to School Transport, and also in homelessness. Work is ongoing with the implementation of the 3-year sustainability plan in Children's Services. The market remains challenging with regards to home to school transport contracts, although we are seeing some reductions there. And also, whilst demand for homelessness services remains high, and grant funding in this area of spend is being reduced. We did bring a report through Cabinet last month with regards to new services or enhanced services to bring down our homelessness spend as well. So as I said, reports in all of these areas have been brought to Cabinet in the last few months, outlining the plan changes for these 3 service areas. Council tax income for this year continues to be monitored closely to see whether there'll be a reduction in council tax income over the current year, as more people are experiencing financial hardship due to the current cost of living crisis. But also we need to bear in mind that we also will be collecting additional income from the introduction of the council tax premiums on second homes. So the council also, the report, also does detail for you the increased cost of the council tax reduction scheme this year, which is an indicator that the council is supporting households wherever possible. So the overall picture on council tax will continue to be monitored throughout this year. There have been some budget variants and technical adjustments between the budgets since the medium-term financial strategy was approved by council in February, and these are detailed for you at paragraph 3.1.11. The majority of the provision in the budget for pay and price increases this year is retained centrally, and it's allocated out to directorates once pay awards and inflationary increases are known. So the largest adjustment that's been made in Q2 has been to reflect the transfer of funding to departments to reflect inflationary pressures that they're experiencing. The monies released in Q2 related mainly to the increased costs due to energy cost pressures and also some increases to meet contractual arrangements. There is still no further update with regard to the funding for the teachers' pension costs, and this is now expected to be available in sometime in the autumn. And by that I mean the actual detail of what this council will receive as part of that settlement. There are some approved savings brought forward from previous years which are still to be found, and those are detailed for you at table 2. And as usual, directorates have been asked to continue to seek to meet these savings requirements and to take mitigating actions wherever possible. When this year's budget was agreed, it included reduction proposals of just over £13 million. It's currently projected that there will be a shortfall on this at the year end, but that shortfall has improved since we reported at Q1. So Appendix 2 details for you the progress made against each of those savings and the action to be taken by directorates to mitigate any shortfall. This afternoon's report provides significant detail with regard to the financial position across the authority, with the financial summary being provided at Appendix 3 and details in the report starting at section 3.3. The cumulative drawdown on revenue reserves at the end of Q2 is shown for you at table 4. Earmarked reserves will continue to be reviewed throughout this financial year, and further details will again be reported in future monitoring reports. Whilst there is an improvement in the projected outturn position, the position obviously does continue to remain concerning for the council, and it is essential that directors and staff do everything they can to bring this level of spend down. So if I may, Leader, I'll just take you to section 9 of the report and the recommendation that Cabinet note the projected year-end revenue positions for 24-25. Thank you.
Thank you, Caris, for that. And we are heading in the right direction, but still ultimately heading an overspend, which is not where we want to be. So great work going on, and thanks to everybody doing the work in there, but there's a lot more to be done. Councillor Howard Williams.
Yes, Leader, and I do agree with those remarks. It is an improving picture, but there's still much to be done to bring council's finances, back in line with our budget. I certainly welcome that improved position, but I do recognise the pressures are there in a number of service areas. And I want to thank the recently set up Revenue Monitoring Board, because we are looking at what can be done in year to address these pressures, and also possibly look at any cost reductions that can be brought forward to offset against these overspend and pressures. And also I quite look forward to being before the costs on Thursday, where I'm sure they will we want to go through these figures in finer detail. So I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Paul Davies.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Caris, for the report. You mentioned earlier, Caris, about council tax and the difficulties people have paying it, etc. Is there any projection currently showing a drop in the revenue from the council tax, or is it too early to say yet?
Sorry. It is too early to say what the likely position is going to be. Our overall council tax collection rate is slightly down at this stage of the year to what it was last year. But we do also have the
additional money coming in because of the premiums that we've got on empty properties and the new premium this year in relation to second homes. So we are actually seeing those collection rates for those two are quite a reasonable. They're where we expect them to be. So we will continue to monitor it. So at the moment, it's, yeah.
Did you second that, Councillor Davis?
Second report, Chair, if you, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because it was moved and seconded. Councillor Melanie Evans?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Mine isn't an actual question, but I would like to put this on record as well. I'd like to firstly thank everybody involved for reducing the actual overspend in Q2. And whilst I appreciate an overspend is still an overspend, budgets never stand still. So it is still a work in progress and lots still to do. However, thank you. It's good to see it is going in the right direction. And I just wanted that put on record. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. And I can do something similar, putting on record. Back to the very first page of the report, and my glass is half empty today, so I need to repeat the first page of the report under Policy Framework and Procedure Rules. As required by Section 3, Budgetary Control of the Financial Procedure Rules, Chief Officers, and that's all you sitting here today, in consultation with appropriate Cabinet members, are expected to manage their services within approved cash-limited budget. I'll repeat that. Are expected to manage their services within the approved cash-limited budget and to provide the Chief Finance Officer with such information as is required to facilitate and monitor budgetary control. I know more I can emphasise that, but that is the important part of this report, and that's something I will keep going on about. And we have to bring things in line with the cash-limited budget. However, we achieve that, and we need the options on occasions, we need the options presented to Leader and Cabinet here to make decisions moving forward. That's glass half empty today for me. Any further comments? But there is great work going on, and we're going in the right direction, but there's a lot more has to be done. However difficult that is. Right, it's been moved and seconded. Thank you, Caris, and as Councillor Williams said, there'll be further discussion, I'm sure, in the scrutiny meeting on Thursday. So, and I propose it's just gone 4 o'clock, we'll have a 10-minute break. Just to have a comfort break for 10 minutes, and we'll resume at 16:12. Thank you.